Alex Pereira is back in action. After being knocked out by Adesanya, he decides to change divisions and try his hand at a higher category. He can now officially be considered a light heavyweight fighter, and the first person to welcome him is Jan Blachowicz, who failed to take the belt in his last fight. Hello fighters. This is World of MMA. In this video I will give a prediction for the highly anticipated fight between Alex Pereira and Jan Blachowicz. But before you start this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like it, so as not to miss the next fights. Here we go. Alex Pereira may not have been in MMA very long, but he has made quite a splash. First, after several mixed martial arts wins, the company notices him and signs him to a promotion to promote his potential fight against Israel in the future. The Brazilian is starting to win and the company decides to fast-track him. The UFC gives him a puncher who at the time was in the top 5 middleweight division. Pereira, to the surprise of many, was able to knock out his opponent and to take his position, thereby knocking himself out of a title fight against an old acquaintance of Adesanya's. The fight for Alex did not turn out the way he wanted it to. The champion controlled the fight for almost the entire allotted time, but at the end of the 5th round Pereira decided to wake up. With one of his punches, he shocks the champion and finishes him off. Thus, he becomes the new middleweight champion. But the UFC gives the former champion a chance, and their rematch went much worse for Alex than their first fight. Until the 3rd round, the fighters had a shootout on the hands, where I didn't see a clear favorite. But in the 3rd round, with one of his punches, Israel sends his opponent into a deep knockout, and thus he avenges his past defeat. Alex wanted to make another fight with Adesanya, but Dana White wasn't thrilled with the idea and suggested that Pereira move up a category and try his hand there. And as we can see, he listened to the advice of the head of the company and fights Jan Blachowicz, a representative of the top 5 in that category. Jan is a top light heavyweight. He's beaten a lot of serious fighters. One of them is the current middleweight champion Israel Adesanya. He also fought on equal terms with the main contender for the title belt, Magomed Ankalaev. Blachowicz is a very dangerous challenge for the Brazilian, because Jan is very versatile and in any aspect of MMA he can surprise the inexperienced Brazilian. But we will talk about that at separate points. But we are going to move smoothly to the main part of the video. Let's take apart all the small details of this fight to see who is the better fighter. And as usual we'll start with the striking, and first up we have Alex Pereira. Alex in the stand-up is more dangerous than ever, because he came from kickboxing. And as we know from Adesanya, the guys who come from this sport are different in their fighting game, i.e. his style, punches, completely different than the average fighter. His footwork and his ability to work on the counterattack can help him catch a pole. As we know, Jan has already been caught with an accurate lateral toward him. Thiago Santos was able to catch Blachowicz's mistakes. So what's a fighter who specializes in counterattacks going to do to him, waiting for you to go at him? Pereira had some moments in his career when he showed his brilliant technique. Now let's move on to the striking technique of Jan Blachowicz. Judging by his skills, Jan is naturally inferior to the former champion. But he has his own equally cool advantages. One of them is the legendary Polish power, with which he has destroyed quite a few high-class fighters. Jan knows how to work in a stand-up. His last fight against Ankalaev, as an example, the Pole used the whole arsenal of his punches. And as we recall, the low kicks played a major role in that fight. Of course, against a kickboxer such tactics could be of no use. But the legendary Polish power has never been cancelled. Pereira has been knocked out before. So what prevents Blachowicz from repeating it again? It's not new to shock the fans. So what can we say about the result? Because of his great experience in punching technique, I'll choose Alex Pereira, who I think should outbox the Pole. Let's move on to wrestling technique, where this time we will start with January. In my opinion, Blachowicz is very strange in this respect. He destroys his opponents in wrestling, then he is the victim himself. But I have a logical explanation for all that. As we know, Blachowicz is not a super fighter. But he has a black belt in BJJ, and opposite him there is an opponent who does not know much about wrestling. He could easily take over and control the whole round. It happened already in the fight against Israel, where Blachowicz showed us his other side. But if he is opposed by a fighter with a good wrestling base, he may not even try to control him. On the contrary, they try to control him. Magomed Ankalaev can prove it with ease. But in his fight against Pereira, he has a big advantage. Let us now turn to Alex Pereira's wrestling. This is the only way I can describe his level. He's not a wrestler at all. He's been able to be out-wrestled by the base striker, Adesanya. So what's going to happen when he meets Jan Blachowicz, who will be happy to transfer you? As I said before, if a Pole sees that his opponent is 0 in the wrestling, then with 100% probability expect transfers. And when you consider the fact that Alex Pereira across from him, don't doubt it. Alex hasn't shown his wrestling skills in MMA yet, and I can't assess his defense or any pluses. Only minuses, because his first professional fight was lost because of his inability to wrestling. And so, without any question, the favorite in this aspect will be considered Jan Blachowicz. As for cardio, Pereira can go the whole 25 minutes. From the fight against Adesanya, we understood what Alex is capable of. Even when he loses a fight, he still stays afloat. But what will happen when they start to wrestle him? I'm curious to see that. Now we move on to the Pole's cardio, and here I don't observe any clear gaps either. He is also able to go all the distance, and the more so, the fight will be held in a 3-round format, where both look great, and I'll put an equal on account of that. Now for the experience, where I'll choose Blachowicz, who did a lot of fights in this weight class. I think Jan Blachowicz will win this fight, as Alex Pereira gets into the fight late, and through his wrestling Blachowicz will easily transfer the Brazilian and control him until the end of the fight. But we should also not forget the danger in the stand-up from Pereira, as he was able to surprise us by knocking out Adesanya. But if Blachowicz doesn't flirt in the stand-up and takes the fight to the canvas, he'll be 100% sure to win. What do you think, friends? Write your opinion in the comments.